The unit base in Norway was alive all over with cheering and applause as the Brigadier and the Doctor returned to the command centre. Soldiers breaking from attention to clap loudly and offer their salutations to the heroes of Earth as they returned victorious once more. The Doctor followed behind his friend, hands in his pockets as he glanced around awkwardly. He normally left before the celebration started these days, but how Alistair had insisted. Besides, if his calculations were correct, then his TARDIS was still in the Brigadier's office, so there was really no avoiding it. Stewart came to a stop at the front of the room. The Doctor tried to slip away, but he felt himself being pulled up to stand next to him before the crowds of soldiers. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Martian threat has been ended," the Brigadier announced. "Due to the quick response of our agents across the globe, we're receiving reports of no civilian casualties as a result of the Martian weapon. Its range of effect never made landfall. There is, however, a massive new ice shelf in the center of the North Atlantic Ocean. I want suggestions on my desk in the next hour of what can be done about that." He paused for a moment and removed his hat, holding it to his chest. The Doctor glanced around the room as everyone emulated him. "If we could just have a moment's silence to remember those brave souls who gave their lives in the Atlantic, fighting to save our planet." The Doctor folded his arms slowly, his eyes scanning the room. Everyone's heads were bowed, their faces still. Some had their eyes closed, others were staring at the floor. He heard a quiet whimpering from the other side of the room, and glanced over to see one of the tech officers sobbing into her hand as one of her colleagues put an arm around her. The Doctor took it all in, a whole room of emotions, and so much sadness. It had been a long time since he stayed long enough to see the damage, the effect that battling a universe full of monsters had on the people in the middle. He silently reminded himself that this was the exact reason he decided not to get involved anymore all those years ago, and his memory started to wander once more. "We lost a lot of good lives to this crisis," the Brigadier suddenly continued. "But we have one man to thank for bringing it to an end before millions of civilians found themselves in the Ice Warrior's sights." He turned to the Doctor and held out his hand. "The Doctor, once again, the saviour of Earth." The room erupted into applause, and the Time Lord awkwardly nodded and smiled. He felt his eyes twinge a little, a light fluttering in his stomach. Or was it his heart's? He could see all those faces smiling up at him. They were all so grateful. And deep down in his dusty old soul, he knew one thing for certain. A tiny bit of himself had missed this. "She's just through here, Doctor," Carson announced proudly, showing the Doctor back into the Brigadier's trashed office. A few soldiers were dotted about, picking up papers and tidying the place as the Time Lord entered the room and beamed with joy. There, stood tall in the corner, in all her glory, was his beloved TARDIS. The small box windows seemed to glow brighter as he entered the room, and he could hear the engines humming quietly within as he crossed the office and put his hand against the tall wooden box. "Good to see you again, old girl," he muttered to himself before turning on the spot back to the captain. "Thank you. Captain Carson, was it?" "That's right, sir." Carson smiled with a slight tip of his head. He held out his hand. "It was an honour to meet you, sir." The Doctor glanced down with an awkward expression and slightly nudged the captain's hand back down by his side. "Yes, well, you too," he said quietly. Carson sighed with a smile and gave a strong salute. "Oh, dear Lord, don't do that. Go on, off you pop. I've got stuff to be doing." Carson glanced back out of the room and then back to the Doctor. "Yes, well, I suppose I better had," he replied with a slightly disappointed tone. "Safe travels, sir." He turned on the spot and moved to the door. The Doctor turned away, but felt a strong wave of something come over him. Another one of those pesky feelings he hadn't concerned himself with for so long. And he turned back. "Captain," he called after Carson, and the soldier turned back. "Next New Year, there's a brand new show headlining in the West End. Skip dinner, take your lady friend to see that instead." He smiled. Carson paused for a moment with a confounded look before glancing back up. "Thanks, Doctor," he said before disappearing around the corner. Just then the Brigadier stepped into the room, his arms behind his back. The Doctor fumbled in his coat pocket and pulled out the TARDIS key, slipping it into the lock and twisting, letting the door hang open. "What was all that about with Carson?" Stewart asked. "His wife left him just 2 months ago. Couldn't keep up with all the extra stress." The Doctor glanced back around. "Well, if that's Howard Carson, then this coming August he'll meet a journalist by the name of Victoria on assignment in London," the Doctor explained. "They stay in touch and he finally takes her out for New Year. The show I just sent them to ran for only a week before the lead actor was taken ill, making it one of the most unique theatre experiences in West End history. They get married 4 months later. The Brigadier frowned a little. "How could you possibly know all that?" he asked, completely dumbfounded, before holding up his hand. "Never mind, I don't think I want to know the answer. Probably some science fiction mumbo-jumbo." The doctor chuckled to himself, and Stewart smiled. "Thank you for coming, old friend." "I wouldn't have missed it for anything, Brigadier." The doctor grinned, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. "That Skaldak fellow. Why did you offer to take him home? Seems a lot more than a monster like him deserved," Stewart asked, and the doctor let out a sigh. "I spend all my lives fighting terrible creatures, Brigadier," the doctor explained. "Villains, monsters, and catastrophes. They're all over the universe, and I fight them wherever I can to save as many innocent people from them as possible. But the universe isn't black and white, my friend. There aren't simply good aliens and bad aliens. Every so often I meet a good alien who's simply lost their way. Skaldak was right. What happened back in that sub tore his world apart, and I was responsible for that. I thought I could save him. I wanted to save him." "I don't think he wanted to be saved, Doctor," Stewart said slowly. "He couldn't see past his lust for revenge. Every time I lose a soldier to some invading race, I feel the same burning hatred deep inside me. I always worry that one day I won't be able to control it, the cry for vengeance." "Oh, you'll always be able to control it," the doctor smiled. "Because you're Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart." The doctor grinned and took a step into his machine, the Brigadier smiling as he did, before calling after him. "Oh, Doctor, just one more thing," he said, and the Time Lord's head popped around the outside of the door. "I couldn't help but notice you're travelling alone at the moment." The doctor's smile faded slightly. Yes, been redecorating the old girl. New regeneration, you know. Out with the old and in with the..." "No, never mind," the doctor explained hurriedly. The Brigadier took a step forward. "But then you'll be picking up someone and whisking them off to see the universe?" he inquired. The doctor glanced off to one side. "Oh, I imagine so. That's the old routine." He smiled nervously. Stewart was not fooled in the slightest. "Yes, well, do one last thing for me, Doctor," he said slowly. "One last request. One friend to another. Find someone. Don't travel alone, Doctor. Find someone and show them the universe." He gave his friend a quick smile, seeing him raise a hand to protest. "That's an order." "Yes, sir," the doctor smirked, disappearing into his machine. Stewart took a few steps back as the engines gave a mighty thud, and then began to wheeze and groan, rising and falling as the light atop the box began to pulse. Lines of light travelled around the box's details as it slowly began to fade, winds picking up all around it, until finally it was gone with a quiet whistling sound. The Brigadier smiled to himself. "Until next time, my old friend."